Hello, I'm State Senator John Kavanagh, and welcome to yet another edition of Kavanagh's Corner, my video report to my constituents on what's happening at the Capitol, especially with respect to me and my bills. I just came in from a press conference on the Senate lawn concerning the Rio Verde water situation, celebrating the passage by both the House and the Senate of Senate Bill 1432. This bill mandates that Scottsdale provide water for up to 3 years to the residents of the Rio Verde foothills, many of whom are without water wells and rely upon water trucked in from a Scottsdale standpipe in large tanker trucks, and it's pumped into large tanks on their property. A couple of years ago, Scottsdale said that they would no longer be providing that service as of this past January 1st, and attempts by the residents to form their own district got mired down in political controversy. As a result of that, the city of Scottsdale stopped the flow of water on January 1st. Now, they did this even though there was water available, so I'm not really sure why Scottsdale did that, but there really was no need for it, especially since the EPCOR private water company said that they would apply and they would provide standpipe service, except that it would take them about 2 years to build their own standpipe to the residents of Rio Verde for the trucks to fill there. So the bill that we passed requires Scottsdale, with many protections which Scottsdale asked to make sure that it doesn't jeopardize their water supply or incur liability. The bill that we passed says they must provide that service for up to 3 years, which will give EPCOR time to get the pipe there. You have to really feel for the people of the Rio Verde's foothills who rely on hauled water. They're using rainwater now to flush their toilets. Some of them are expending a fortune getting not enough water from outside tankers. Some of them have no water. So it's a real crisis. And myself and Representative Collin had mirror bills that we put together with input from Scottsdale to make the mandate more palatable to them. But in the end, they got mired in politics. And because of that, they didn't pass. And at the very end, Senator Wadzak had a water bill 1432 that she sacrificed up to us and let us put the final language on the Rio Verde water bill fix on that, and it passed the Senate and it passed the House. It is now awaiting the governor's signature, and we believe that she will in fact sign that bill. All right, let's talk about some other bills that I have sent up to the governor. SB 1006 passed out of both chambers, and it's going up to the governor. This particular bill has to do with relieving the expensive burden the municipalities have in having to purchase ads in newspapers to give notices of meetings and things like that. The bill had to be greatly watered down as a part of a compromise situation, but at least the municipalities and counties, they'll still have to publish, but not nearly as many backup documents, which cost a lot of money. SB 1010 also went up to the governor. I'm running this bill for some parents of students at Brophy High School. Brophy High School has a rowing team, and they practice in Tempe Town Lake, and they compete, nationally, actually, very good rowing team. And one of the problems they have is that when you're doing this competitive rowing, and we're talking about those skinny boats you see like in English movies, crew, you can't wear a bulky life vest because that gets in the way of competitive rowing. However, in Arizona, if you're under, I think it's 16 or 18, you have to have a life vest on. So the parents said, could we be exempt when we're training our students as part of the school program, so long as one person in the boat being rowed is a trained lifesaver, and next door to them, right beside them in a motorized boat, are other adults who have life-saving equipment. So hopefully the governor will sign that. SB 1013 went up also, awaiting signature or veto. I'm hoping that this bill is signed. This bill simply says that everywhere on a public college campus in Arizona, everywhere is a free speech zone. The practice of saying only certain areas are free speech for talking about issues or setting up tables will end. The whole campus is free speech unless it's disruptive to a class or it's an area that's not open to the public. And in addition, I have another bill, SB 1023, residential picketing. That is a change to existing law that deals with making it illegal to picket the private homes of government officials. Now, you can legally do that, but under current law, you can't if, in fact, your behavior, in the opinion of the picketer, is threatening or harassing. The problem with that is that the picketer may be a wacko who doesn't think something which is threatening or harassing is such. So I'm changing the law very simply to say it's not what the person picketing thinks, it's would a regular normal person think that the behavior would be threatening or harassing to the people inside the house. And this is the same objective standard that we use in other areas where belief is a factor in law, like the justifications for the use of force. Another bill that's up there awaiting, I think, signature is SB 1068, which is police dogs emergency treatment. A physician who volunteers with a police department SWAT team came to me and said, sometimes the dogs, the police dogs, get injured when they're helping the cops in SWAT missions or other law enforcement missions. And sometimes they can't be transported by a police car, but in fact they need an ambulance because maybe the dog has fractured bones where you can't bend them into a car. Other states allow ambulances, well, require ambulances, people ambulances, to transport these dogs to a nearby veterinary emergency facility. Now, there were some concerns by the rural fire districts who run ambulances about the availability of the ambulance for people in these situations. So many concessions were made. Well, the bill originally said that the ambulance can only be used if a human being doesn't need the ambulance. But I also added for the fire districts that if there was not a backup ambulance for people, then they didn't have to do this, because sometimes fire districts in rural areas only have one ambulance. I then added another request I added for that, which says that the transport can't be more than 30 minutes from the veterinary facility, so the ambulance is not tied up for a long period of time. And I think the governor will sign this. SB 1085, time limit on DUI prosecutions. I was approached by our prosecutors who had a problem because the current statute of limitations for DUI prosecutions is 1 year. And that means that if they don't bring charges up, start the prosecution, within a year, the case is dismissed. Well, in certain serious DUI cases involving death or serious injury, it often takes much longer than a year to get everything ready for prosecution. So they asked for an extension of up to 2 years, but only in situations where the DUI killed or seriously injured somebody. And I think that'll be signed also. The police also came to me, maybe because I'm a retired cop, with their request, which I'm hoping to fulfill in SB 1148, which is law enforcement video recording fee. The videos that police record from the police cameras officers wear at incidents, these videos are subject to public disclosure with a Freedom of Information request. And the problem is that it is much more expensive to process the video recordings than it is to simply do the letters or emails that were sent to a public official, which is also public records requestable. So they said, you know, this is really costly. I mean, it's not just the physical duplication, but we have to have somebody trained in the law to redact certain things that must be redacted, like personal information that's visible on the screen, the images of victims, the images of minors. These all have to be blurred out, and it's very expensive. So the original bill said that if a person requests this video, they must compensate the government entity, i.e. the taxpayers, right, for the complete cost of the transcribing. In the end, we compromised and we said that they get compensated for the cost and just for the first time, because once it's processed, anybody else can get it for a less cost because the expenses have been made already. So the maximum cost is $46 an hour. And another reason why we need this is that when it's a high profile case like a shooting, there may be 5, 6, 10 cops there, all with cameras. And some people were asking for the footage from every cop at the scene. So the cost was astronomical. So hopefully this will partially reimburse the communities and deter people from asking for unnecessary footage, like from every cop who's at the scene. So that's SB 1175. Moving along, SB 1291, that is a bill concerning conservatorships and guardianships. Now, a conservatorship or a guardianship is when somebody, sometimes an underage child who can't make their own decisions, doesn't have parents, sometimes an adult who has lost their mental capacities, when there's no family member capable of doing it for them, like a spouse, then in these situations, the court will appoint somebody, a stranger, to run their lives, financially, socially, who they can see, what they spend things on. And we also discovered that this stranger who suddenly is in charge of these people's lives could overrule prior decisions like healthcare mandates that they may have put into a process. So this simply introduces more transparency. It means that the person who is having their rights to make decisions taken away has to be made aware of their rights, what's going on, greater protection where they can see friends and relatives, because the conservator can say, you can't see this aunt, this niece, this child. Well, we're making it a higher bar before you can ban somebody from seeing their family or other people. In addition, it provides for a new type of support by volunteers who can give the person advice to help them make their own decisions. Moving along, misconduct, SB 1301, misconduct investigations time limit. Last year, I had a bill at the request of the police, which was signed into law, which said that if the police cannot conduct an investigation of a police officer, and I'm talking about internal non-criminal investigations, like cops violating rules, if they could not complete that within a year, the case had to be dropped. Because open cases are a cloud over the cop's head that may prevent a promotion. Or if they want to transfer to a different department, it may prevent the transfer because there's a cloud of suspicion over the cop because of the open case. And there's no reason not to settle these cases within a year. The big offender here is Maricopa County, which has thousands of outstanding cases, some going back many years. So the bill took care of the bills that the cases that were introduced or started after the signing of the bill, but it didn't take into account old cases. We discovered that there were older cases as old as 3 years, which still hadn't been dismissed or heard. So this bill simply says, not only does the one-year limit apply to bills going forward from last year's bill signing, but all the back cases, you only have 1 more year to do them or they're dismissed. Right. Moving on, Senate Bill 1588, which is criminal justice data collection. The agency called the Arizona Criminal Justice Commission, they're charged with collecting criminal justice system data about arrests and prosecutions and court cases and prison statistics and compiling them into an understandable way so that policymakers like me or researchers or reporters can really get a better view of what's actually happening. Now, we don't have the greatest collection system, and this agency wants to put together an entirely new system to collect the data and organize it, and that's what this bill allows them to do. All right, well, those are the bills that are up there, hopefully awaiting signature. Now, unfortunately, we have to talk about the bills of mine that were vetoed by the governor. So let's get to that list. The first one is Senate Bill 1026, State Monies Drag Shows for Minors. Now, there were a number of drag show bills which the governor has vetoed. Mine was a very limited bill. What my bill said was that no government money, which could be grant money given by the Arts Commission that we fund, or no government facilities like a town hall or a school, right? They could not be used to sponsor or otherwise support or facilitate not any drag show, a drag show targeting minors. We are involved in a cultural war in this country with people who are very much into this transgender thing, trying to indoctrinate, propagandize our young people into thinking that this is perfectly fine. And drag shows are one manifestation of this woke transgender agenda. So again, my bill simply said government money can't be used to indoctrinate kids, but the governor vetoed that bill. I had another bill, SB 1066, election mailings, third-party disclosures. Activist groups trying to put their finger on the scale of elections send out mailings that look just like mailings from the recorder, trying to get information or trying to get you to register with them so they can get your name. It's perfectly legal to do that, but all my bill said was, if this is not a government agency, but a political action group that's trying to look like a government agency, in big type somewhere on the envelope, it has to say that this is not from a government agency. Transparency. Governor vetoed it, unfortunately. And then finally, there's SB 1135, spoiled early ballots, election day. This would have allowed a person who has an early ballot that doesn't trust the mailing and doesn't want to just drop it into a bucket at the elections place because they're not sure it's going to be counted properly, to instead walk up to the desk and say, I want to vote this early ballot in person here on election day. And they would be given a regular ballot. They could go into the booth, they could copy the information on and have it put through the machine and have their vote instantly tallied. In addition, this bill would have prohibited Arizona from belonging to any interstate election information consortium that gives or sells information to private political groups. And we're talking about a group that Arizona belongs to called ERIC, which apparently is making election information that's useful in tilting elections available to outside groups when it shouldn't be doing that. So that brings my grand total of bills vetoed by the governor to 26 bills. However, I don't want to cheat. 13 of those bills were the budget bills that she vetoed. So in reality, you got to take 12 off of the 26. So I'm at 14 vetoed bills, which actually is the record. I'm in first place. Although I may also be in first place for the number of bills signed. So I'll keep track of that. But in any event, that concludes this edition of Kavanagh's Corner. There will probably be at least one more in the near future because the legislature is still in session. And we are in session for two reasons. Number one, we still have about half a dozen gubernatorial directorship appointees to confirm. The high-ranking heads of state departments that the governor appoints have to be approved by a legislative committee involving these nominations. And if we were to adjourn with these 6 not being given hearings, the governor could automatically put them in charge of the agencies. And that would be an abdication of our responsibility to vet these people. While most of the people that the governor has proposed, we have allowed to go through and voted on in the full floor to confirm the appointments. There have been a couple that were really bad and that either withdrew after our opposition was known or we voted down. So we want to continue to do that. And in addition, there is one major bill yet to be negotiated, and that is the bill involving Prop 400. Now, Prop 400 is a proposition that would go to the voters of Maricopa County to extend the half-cent sales tax that is used for transportation. Now, it was instituted decades ago, it was already renewed once, and now it's up for renewal again. And the concern that we have with what the municipalities in Arizona and Maricopa County, through the MAG, Maricopa Association of Governments, is that their bill had not enough roads, which is what people want, and far too much light rail, which is inefficient and which only benefits a sliver of the population. So we wanted to put more money for roads and highways and road maintenance, still leaving a reasonable amount for bus service, but only maintenance of existing light rail, no extension of light rail. We also wanted a provision that they could not convert existing road lanes for cars into non-car lanes, like bike lanes. Because what's the purpose of spending money to build more roadways when you're going to allow these government entities to close down existing roadways? And this is happening a lot in Phoenix. During legislative session, there's really no place to eat at the Capitol. So I often drive around Phoenix to different restaurants to pick up lunch. I virtually never see anybody driving a bicycle. And that's, by the way, between January and like April or May when the weather's not horrid, right? So no one's driving bikes. There are a couple of roads that they've already in central Phoenix converted to bike lanes. Guess what? I never see a bicycle on those roads. This is like a woke dream for uber environmentalists about taking cars off the road and replacing them with bikes when there are no bikes to replace them with. Just like this light rail is like a very expensive like Lionel train set for these same ultra environmentalists who think that the answer to pollution is to have extremely expensive light rail lines that virtually nobody rides. So we're going to continue to hold strong on Prop 400 and make sure that it's what the people want and not what a bunch of idealistic environmentalists want to push on the people, because it's your money and I'm here to protect your money. And that's it for Kavanagh's Corner. Thank you.